You're listening to the Cyberwire Network, powered by N2K.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to N2K Cyberwire's Hacking Humans podcast, where each week we look behind the social engineering scams, phishing schemes, and criminal exploits that are making headlines and taking a heavy toll on organizations around the world. I'm Dave Bittner, and joining me is Joe Kerrigan from the Johns Hopkins University Information Security Institute. Hey, Joe.
Hi, Dave.
We got some good stories to share this week and are joined once again by our N2K colleague and host of the T-Minus Daily Space podcast, Maria Vermazis. Hi, Maria.
Hey!
We will be right back after this message from our show sponsor. But first, a word from our sponsors at KnowBe4. Time travel would be a particularly powerful tool in the hands of any overworked InfoSec professional. Think about it. Being able to see the future and know which malicious emails would be missed by all the existing filters. Your ability to stay one step ahead of the bad actors would rise to a whole new level. Unfortunately, our sponsors haven't cracked time travel just yet. They are, however, introducing a new phishing protection product that can block and remove dangerous phishing emails before your users even see them. Stay with us, and in a few minutes, you'll learn how. All right, before we dig into our stories here, we have a couple of little bits of follow-up. I'm going to start off here. We got a nice note from someone named Nathan who writes in, and I don't have the time to read the whole thing here, but Nathan sent in a nice note talking about how he's a regular listener and enjoys the show, and partially based on inspiration from some of the things he's heard from this show, he's decided to go back to school and pursue a degree that he had put off years ago and is looking forward to that. So that's really gratifying. And awesome. Tip of the hat to Nathan, and we wish him the best.
Yeah. Good luck, Nathan.
Yeah.
Thanks for writing in and letting us know.
Yeah, that is great. What else do we have here, Joe?
Dave, we have someone who didn't leave a name, but we'll call them M, like someone from James Bond or perhaps Men in Black.
Okay.
And this person was writing in about our episode with, I think it was Maria's story 2 weeks ago, or maybe it was your story, Dave.
Yeah, I think it was mine.
With the with the chase alert. And we said they should reword it so that it says, did you call Chase? But he pointed out, with some pretty good adversarial thinking here, that there's an easy play for the attackers. They just send you a text message and then ask you to call their number. And his point is that it is essential. I'll read what he wrote here. It is essential that people use a known good number, saved previously or looked up from a reliable source, to call in situations like this. And he says whenever I'm assuming it's a he, it could be a she, we don't know. M says, whenever they get a new debit card or credit card from the bank, they save and update the password manager with the phone numbers on the back of the card. It can be a good idea to create a contact with that number in your phone as well. I've done that with a lot of my credit cards. But there is a potential drawback of legitimizing an incoming call if the number is spoofed. So each person should decide if the risks of adding contacts is worth it for them or not.
Right.
I say you can still add it as a contact, but if you've added it as a contact, you can tell them, I understand, I'm going to hang up and call you back and ask for your fraud department, what's your extension?
Right.
Or how do I get back in touch with somebody, or do you have a case number for me?
Right.
I'm not going to do this over an inbound call. That's really the big thing, is you don't do this over an inbound call, and you don't do this over some number that was given to you. Mm-hmm. You call the known good number, and that's the only communication that you trust, is when you make the outbound connection over the known good number.
Right.
So that's some pretty good adversarial thinking. That a lot of people... I don't think it's natural for probably 90% of the people in the world. They just don't think adversarially.
Yeah. They have good hearts.
They have good hearts, right?
And bless them.
Right.
Must be nice.
It must be. I've told my stories about on here about my experiences of adversarial thinking and how I've appalled people around me with it. And, generally it's not socially acceptable. And that's kind of what these guys are banking on, actually.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's it's this having this kind of level of thinking and being able to suss this out is important, and it doesn't make you a bad person for thinking adversarially. What makes you a bad person is when you do bad things.
Okay,
Just
fair
busting
enough.
it out at parties, maybe not so much. Right?
That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah, that's
Yes.
how to not be invited back to a cocktail party.
I could write the book on that, Dave. I've got a number of people I've been invited to see once.
Oh, poor Joe. All right. Well, Joe, I'll tell you what. We'll let you start off things here today. What story do you have for us?
And to be honest, that's fine with me, actually. But I'm always late to parties, Dave.
Yeah?
And I am late to this party. Here we are at the end of May, and the Verizon data breach investigation report came out earlier this month. And I don't know why I am always late to this party. It's right about now, around June, I say to myself, shouldn't the data breach investigation report have come out? And I go, oh, it came out at the beginning of the month.
Right.
So this year, they successfully reached over 10,000 breaches in their report that they analyzed, and this is all over 2023. By the way, we'll put a link in the show notes. You can just go out and download the report. You don't have to give their name. You can just say, click, just read it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I love the writing style of this report. It's very tongue-in-cheek. It says, you may think this, silly person, or a lot of wording like that. It's a fun read. It's entertaining,
Right.
which I think is great for a report that is as technical as this report is.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not going to get down to a lot of the technical weeds, but the first thing I noticed from Verizon was how they have revised how they calculated the involvement of the human element in breaches, and they removed malicious privilege misuse, which is I don't know exactly what they mean by that, but they do document that elsewhere. But that's not really what I'm getting at. They removed a certain portion from the human factors part of the equation, and that did not change that human factors are still the biggest factor in breaches, accounting for 68%, basically unchanged from last year.
Wow.
There is an interesting thing that they talk about in terms of initial access vectors, and that means how does the bad guy first get into to your network or get into whatever it is. And usually these are networks because Verizon has a security business around protecting business networks. Number one is credentials. They use credentials. And there are a number of ways they do this, but we'll talk about this later. They probably get those through phishing. Number two is actual phishing. For initial access. This is where they say, here, open this file. They don't necessarily go and send you to a credential harvesting site. They just say, run this for me, and they get, that opens a shell out to them,
Right.
lets them connect in. It's malicious software that gives them control. And number three is exploiting a vulnerability, which is increasing and close to the phishing for initial access. So it's actually exploiting a vulnerability is coming up in ways bad guys are getting into networks. In fact, Verizon breaks this down even further about the initial access. They say web app credentials are number one. So somebody phished a web app credential.
Okay.
Phishing is number two, sending an email with malicious attachments, right? And then web app vulnerability is number three. RDP credentials are at number four at about 10%. RDP is remote desktop protocol. I'm using, that's actually a Microsoft term, but any remote desktop system. VPN credentials and exploit are number 5 and number 7 respectively, with a desktop exploit being number 6. So really, the best thing they recommend in this early part of the report is if you can get your web apps behind a VPN, you can reduce your attack surface significantly because they're not really finding a lot of vulnerabilities in VPNs, and they're not really using VPN credentials because a lot of those credentials actually have one-time multi-factor authentication on them. So if you can do that business-wise, do that for your web apps, because then you take away one of the biggest attack surfaces that's being utilized, and that's putting web apps out there, either vulnerabilities or stuffing credentials into them. The other thing is they said you should definitely not put your remote desktop connections on the internet. Get those behind a VPN now. There's no reason to have those out there for everyone to access.
Yep.
That should be behind a VPN.
Right.
So guess what the big motivating factor for these data breaches was? Anybody want to guess? It's an easy one. It hasn't changed much.
Money?
Money! That's right, Dave. Money accounts for the motivation of somewhere around 90% of these attacks.
That's low.
Yeah, I think it's 95 actually. I
there you
can't
go.
remember the number exactly, but it's way up there. I mean, I talk about this frequently. Used to say all the different reasons, and now it's mostly money. The next biggest thing at like 5% is espionage, and then everything else is less than 1%. So just be mindful. People are out there making money off this.
I'm nostalgic for the days when notoriety was one of the main reasons. That's
That's right. Do your street
gosh,
cred.
that feels like ancient history.
Yeah,
Jeez.
me too.
Oh my
Me
God.
too. So take another guess. Who is going to be more likely to breach your network? Is it going to be an internal actor or an external actor?
Well, all right. I don't want to nitpick you here, but
Right.
You mean intentionally or otherwise?
Intentionally or otherwise. That's good.
Okay.
A good differentiation.
Yeah.
Or otherwise is doing a lot of heavy lifting there.
Right.
Right. I mean, I would say your internal people making mistakes is probably your biggest problem.
It is a big problem, but
Okay.
the external breachers are actually still the bigger problem.
Oh, okay.
Of the internal breaches, 73% of these are internal actor breaches are error, what you're talking
Yes.
about, everything else where somebody accidentally does this. So Verizon shows a chart here about how these two values over time are starting to converge, right? External breaches caused by external actors are going down, and proportions of breaches rather of internal actors is going up. They're gonna meet it, I guess, 50%, right?
Yeah.
But Verizon says the reason for this is because of the new reporting requirements. So if you have an accidental disclosure of data, now there are mandatory reporting requirements that you have to report, or you're going to face some kind of fine.
Mhm.
So the
Yep.
question is, does this make you guys feel better about this or worse? Because what happened last year when there weren't these mandatory, or in 2022 when there weren't these mandatory requirements?
Right.
People just go, oh, well, oops.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't make me feel anything personally. It's just sort of like an acknowledgement of what we knew was happening.
Right.
I mean, it's going to alarm a lot of people who maybe don't know that this is sort of how it's always been.
Right.
But I mean, I think more transparency is a good thing.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. And I think you're absolutely right, Maria, that what's happening here is we're not seeing anything new. Nothing new is happening. I think that what is happening is people are being forced to be more transparent about when they have accidentally leaked out a bunch of healthcare records because somebody said, send me this data file.
Yeah.
It happens a lot.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing we're going to start seeing some good data around is just how much a lot is.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
I mean, it keeps a lot of people employed is preventing that kind of oopsie.
Yep. It is a pretty steep curve from 2022 to 2023. So if you take a look at the report and look at that graph, you'll see it. They talk about AI in here. They say it's not really being used much for social engineering, but it is. Yeah, not yet. But it is being used for learning how to code, which is making a lot of these bad actors more capable. But they say, this report says, they think these actors believe that their current social engineering tactics are good enough. And now I can focus on the social engineering part of the report, which is what the name of this show, although I did kind of pick out everything from beginning of the report that was kind of social engineering related. Pretexting is the leader in attacks, and attackers are targeting users in email chains with contexts in their phishing attacks. Or in their targeted email attacks. So they're going in there, they're knowing what the email conversation is about, and they're hitting them with context, and people don't see it coming. So it's the biggest cause of these breaches from social engineering, biggest social engineering attack cause. Phishing and pretexting account for 73% of these data breaches. Naturally here for social engineering, 100% of the actors are external. Nobody is socially engineering their way out of the big organization. I don't know if that's a meaningful statistic or not. But credentials are retrieved in about 50% of these breaches. So when there is some kind of data breach, credentials are retrieved, and that might lead to more data being breached. There's a good chance it will. The vectors, this is what's amazing about this, is the vector is almost 100% email. They have a section called Ishing in the Wind, right? And they talk about the thing I hate so much, phishing, vishing, smishing, quishing, right?
Right.
None of that's important. Phishing is what's important. Everything else is less than a percentage of what's going on. It's very close to 100%.
I mean, it makes sense in terms of volume and ease, right? I mean, it's just so easy to do that.
Because like I was talking about 2 weeks ago, email just is terrible. Anybody can send you an email. Why not? And if you can get into what I call the king of social engineering attacks, business email compromises, then you can really make it happen, especially with that context, which is where we're going now. The median transaction size for a successful business email compromise attack, about $50,000. That's the median transaction size, which means half of them are bigger than that. And the other half are not, but half of them are bigger than that. This is about the same as it was last year, so it's not really a big increase, but there is something very interesting in this report that I wanted to highlight. The top lesson from the business email compromise discussion in this report is get in touch with law enforcement as soon as you realize you have been hit. 50% of the incidents where there was a loss were able to freeze and then recover 79% or more of the money they lost, which is impressive to me.
Yeah.
More than half of these people got back most of their money, is what this is saying.
That really surprises me, actually.
Right. The graph, if you look at the graph, I'm going to use a fancy word here, it's bimodal, which means it has two peaks. And those peaks are at the extreme of the graph. And the second biggest graph of dots or stack of dots is where people got none of their money back. 18% of the people got none of their money back, but more than 18% got all of their money back. And Verizon makes a point of saying that the biggest indicator or biggest way you can help move yourself to the right of this graph and get more money back, contact law enforcement right away. Because if you get the FBI involved, they can reach out to the banks and they can stop the money from moving before it goes overseas or into other accounts and gets pulled out by money mules.
Was there an inflection point for that, Joe? Because I seem to recall some time ago that some of the common thinking was don't bother. Or maybe I'm misremembering that.
Yeah, there was not an inflection point that I saw in the data or in the report. Hold on, maybe I should go look.
I'm just anecdotally, honestly. I just remember a time when people was like, yeah, you lost that money, it's gone. Don't even bother trying to get law enforcement involved. It's not going to help. And I'm glad to see that is definitely no longer the case. When did that happen?
I guess it is interesting because I think a big part of it was that certainly like local law enforcement just didn't know how to deal with any of this stuff.
Yeah, there's nothing in here that says anything about time horizon or what time is that inflection point.
Yeah.
But the sooner the better is what Verizon says here in this report.
That's interesting.
Yeah, but I was surprised by this. I mean, if we could make this not profitable just simply by calling somebody at a financial crimes unit and getting it resolved immediately, this would go away. This would stop being an issue. So
maybe notoriety can be number one again. Bring back script kiddies.
Right. I think they're going to find other ways to monetize it. So that's one of the big takeaways from this report, I would say. Another point is that more users are reporting phishing attempts. It's now up to about 20% of all users are reporting phishing attempts, which I think is kind of low, but it's actually, I guess it's pretty good. It's one in 5 users who receives a phishing email is reporting it. This includes 11% of those who actually click on the link and report it, which is good. Because those people are clicking on the link and they've already made the mistake of clicking on the link. But then they realize, 11% of them go, or some percentage of them go, no, this is wrong. That was a phishing email. I'm going to report it.
Right.
So that means more than 11% are probably realizing this is wrong. By the way, there is one thing in here I wanted to talk about. All right, take a guess at the time lag between someone opening an email and someone clicking the link. If they're going to click the link, what's that time lag?
Oh, jeez.
Seconds? I mean,
it is measured in seconds.
Yeah.
I guess the point being that if you're a link clicker, chances are you're not going to have read the email.
Yeah, it's 21 seconds is how long it takes.
And then slower than I would have thought.
Okay.
It's like Pavlovian response. Don't even read. Just
Right.
click.
Then, if someone's going to enter their credentials once they've clicked on the link, what do you think the time lag from starting to enter, from clicking on a link to having entered your credentials is?
Probably similar.
Yeah, it's 28 seconds.
Huh.
So if somebody is going to lose their credentials, they're going to do it in less than a minute,
Wow.
which is another interesting finding from this report as well.
It seems,
Yep.
Go ahead.
I was going to say the Verizon data breach report is out there. I recommend everybody go out and read it. It's very readable. It's approachable from a layperson's understanding, but it also has a lot of data in it, which is great. I think maybe it's not approachable from a layperson's standard. I don't know. It's a good read.
It is one of a handful of reports that people really look forward to every year for all the reasons that you're mentioning here. It seems to me, like for me, the take home here is that if you are in a position where you can mandate that yourself and the people around you use multi-factor authentication on their email, you should do that.
Yes.
Like that is a high impact move that you can make for
Absolutely.
everybody.
It absolutely stops account takeover for email accounts right in their track, for a lot of things, right in the tracks. And if you can do that with universal two-factor, some kind of FIDO Alliance universal two-factor product, we always like to suggest my favorite, the YubiKey. I mean, it's not my favorite, it's the one I bought, but it's out there.
It's the one you have the most sunk cost into. So that makes it your favorite.
Yeah, I do.
Fair enough.
And my wife uses one. So it's not high friction device. And that's what FIDO has done, is to make this the FIDO Alliance has made this to be a low friction device.
Yeah. Yeah, no, they're great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, interesting story, and we will have a link to the report in our show notes here. Maria, what do you got for us?
Well, this story actually comes from a listener named Ross. So it was in the Hacking Humans inbox. So I figured, let's take a look at this one. And it is about an incident with Airbnb, which is, I feel like, a bit of a punching bag for a lot of us lately. But
Well,
something
they
a
bring
little
it on
weird.
themselves.
It's something a little weird happened to Ross. And he basically wanted to bring it to our attention and also have us ask listeners if something like this has happened to them. So here's what happened to Ross.
Okay.
He had recently updated his Airbnb password because sounds like he got a notification of an Airbnb breach. So he changed his password. He did the thing a lot of people do, where he appended an exclamation point and maybe a number or two to his previous password. And he admitted in the email that maybe that was not complex enough because it's a familiar story to many of us.
Yep.
A few days after this password change occurred, he goes on to say this: I created an Airbnb account back in 2014 when I was living in Salt Lake City. I'm British, not me, Maria. This is Ross. Now live in Geneva, Switzerland. While I was at a conference in Lyon, France, and last country, I promise, this is again his note. Last September, I received a notification on my Airbnb app that my booking starting tonight in London had been approved. So again, he's in Geneva getting a notification about his London thing. So that doesn't make any sense.
Right.
I immediately logged in, reset the password, and logged out all accounts. I then canceled the booking, although Airbnb would only refund about 33% of the booking as it was starting that night. They told me they could contact the host, who of course declined to refund the missing. This is 300 Swiss francs, which is about $300, I suppose. So it's not so much money, says Ross, but I think this is not an isolated case. Airbnb told me that I can contact my credit card company, and there's a whole other story there, to challenge the charge, which he did. Okay, so that sounds pretty standard, right? There's a fraudulent charge. You then dispute it sometimes with the app or the company. They go, not our problem, talk to your credit card, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
So here's where it takes a turn. This is sort of what piqued my interest with Ross's story. 2 to 3 months after he challenged the charge, which his credit card company, by the way, had refunded him, his credit card company then reversed the refund.
What?
They said, actually, no, you do owe this money. Yeah.
Oh.
So apparently Airbnb, when they heard about Ross challenging this fraudulent charge, Airbnb provided evidence to the bank saying that the booking was not a fraud. And the evidence that they provided to the bank included Ross's IP address from 2014, which actually conflicted with his actual location. So it showed his IP address in Switzerland, but he hadn't been there until 2018. So it's sort of like, what on earth were they providing?
Huh.
So remember, when Ross created his Airbnb account, he was in Salt Lake City and not Switzerland. Yeah.
Right.
So the locations are it's not like they were next to each other. We're talking United States, Switzerland.
But his IP address when he created the account said he was in Switzerland.
No, when he created it, so this is a little confusing. I'll go over it again. When he created his account in 2014, he was in Salt Lake City, not in Switzerland.
Right.
However, Airbnb provided his Switzerland IP address to the bank as proof of his fraudulent charge.
Huh. Okay.
Which is not correct. It's not correct. So this then kicks off 3 more months of back and forth with Airbnb by Ross to get that incorrect charge refunded back to him again. What he found out through his bank was that Airbnb basically had provided him the incorrect IP address, again, his Salt Lake City IP, not Switzerland. And he's just saying, did anyone actually look at the IP address dump? Or are they just sending a bunch of random IP-like digits and assuming, well, Airbnb sent us something. We don't know what this actually means. We're just going to presume that they're correct and say this guy was actually a fraud.
Right.
Yeah. So
basically, Airbnb's hitting the bank with an avalanche of evidence to just overwhelm them.
Mm-hmm. And nobody's actually looking at it or understanding what it means. Because if you did, you would notice like, well, this doesn't make any sense. None of it's matching with each other.
Right.
So Airbnb did not provide a data log for the actually fraudulent booking. So the one that said that he was staying in London when he was in France, they never sent that actually fraudulent booking to the bank as proof of fraud. That was also very strange, said Ross. And he was told to contact a lawyer if he wanted that data. So this whole thing is very, very odd. So this is how Ross sends his email. I contacted my bank as I believe that Airbnb may have had a simple standard procedure to automatically dispute any chargeback claims, which is, of course, fraudulent and attempts to defraud a bank. Mm-hmm. My bank is essentially not interested, especially as this is a global company. No win, no fee lawyers are not legal in Switzerland, so I'm not going to spend my own money to go after them. I contacted a national representative here, but much the same. There's no interest in going after a 300 franc claim that might indicate a larger issue. Are they just skimming bits and pieces of money here and there? ? Says Ross. So I thought this was kind of interesting. To me, this seemed like just somebody got lazy and just sent a bunch of logs and were like, you figure it out. We're assuming this is fraudulent.
I think this is standard business practice. That would be my guess. It's a cynical guess.
Yeah.
But, what looks like happened here is that somebody got into Ross's account and Ross admits this, he wasn't using the best password policy. Hygiene here. But once he realized what was going on, he did everything he should have done, including notifying Airbnb and notifying his bank, and nobody was in his corner.
Yeah.
Nobody was in his corner. And when he went to the credit card company, who they say, hey, we got your back, buddy, they actually said no. Airbnb provided us with this data dump. Here, take a look at it. And it doesn't add up because of exactly what you said. These guys just avalanche them, snowstorm them. And there they are.
Nobody in his corner is the part that's shocking me. Like his bank did a little bit of help by giving him the data that Airbnb had sent them saying, here, you take a look at it. But it's just so odd to me that not his fault, that he was just completely on his own on this. That it took him months of work to just recover this money.
Right.
I have a couple questions. So what do we suppose was going on with the initial Airbnb fraud here? The fraudulently booked night in London. Do we suppose that was a fraudster looking to spend a night in London or something else going on there?
That's an excellent question.
It's a good question. I don't know.
So here's what it could be. It could be that. It could be exactly as you describe it. Or it could be somebody who has set up a fraudulent place to rent. Then they go out and they buy cracked Airbnb passwords. They make a reservation for that night. This is all one guy with 2 phones, right?
Mm.
He makes the reservation for that night. He then goes to his homeowner account, his landlord account, and approves the agreement. And then as soon as that email goes out, hey, it's been approved, the actual legitimate user goes in, resets the passwords, cancels the reservation. But because of Airbnb policy, they only give back 33%. the remaining 66% goes to the owner of the house or owner of the property, the person leasing it out. There might not even be a property there.
Okay. I was going to say,
Right.
if you own property and you have it on Airbnb, this seems like a very inefficient way to make some money. I don't know. But if you're saying the property's not even real, then okay, never mind.
Yeah.
Right. Or you're only approving the fake rentals that you yourself initiate.
Right. And then, he gets, if he gets back, well, he says he lost $300. So every time I go out and buy a cracked, the username and password for an Airbnb account, that might cost me $10, but I make $300.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I suppose you'd have to have a bunch of burner phones or something, or accounts to keep Airbnb from catching on.
Right.
That the same person keeps trying to rent this place,
or maybe they don't care.
Well, that's true. It's not. Yeah, it's against their interest. I don't know.
I've heard so many anecdotal stories about people having issues with Airbnb, not necessarily this kind of thing, but just trying to get money back from issues. And this story just did not strike me as surprising, which is sad.
Yeah.
So, I thought it was very interesting, and I really appreciate that Ross sent this through. So I guess, listeners, if you've experienced something like this, let us know, and we'll let Ross know.
Yeah. The only other thing I would add here is just based on my own personal experience and that of, friends, family, all that kind of thing, is that my understanding is that if you book something like this through American Express, they do have your back.
Right.
Yep.
Like, of all the credit card companies. Now, American Express is a more expensive bank card to have. It is a bank card, not a credit card. There's all kinds of pluses and minuses, but there have been so many times where people have said to me, I had a problem with a merchant and I called American Express and they were like, we got this. Don't worry about it. It's done. And it is, for not small purchases, things that might cost tens of thousands of dollars. And Amex is just like, no, we got this. You're good. Don't worry about it. Don't think of it again.
They do not sponsor this show.
No, they don't. But, I guess what I'm saying is that it is a premium product. Right?
Right.
And it's not for everybody because of the fact that it does cost more to use. But if you have the means, I highly recommend it.
Yeah.
Right?
He's not in the United States, though. So, I mean, is it available?
That's true. That's a good point.
I would just hope this kind of protection would be available to anyone who's a bank customer. Just saying, hey, this is fraudulent. You were just given a whole bunch of basic data spam. Nobody looked at it. It doesn't make any sense.
Right.
I have looked at it. I'm telling you, it doesn't make any sense. Could you look at it? It shouldn't take 3 months for this to be resolved. It's just horrendous that this happened.
Yeah, that's true. Well, cautionary tale. And like you said, Maria, I've heard plenty of these stories about folks just getting the runaround from Airbnb as well.
Yeah.
So,
yep.
Seems like a good deal at the time, but you never know.
Right.
you roll some dice and you take your chances.
Yep.
That's right. That's right. All right. Interesting story here. There is no link to share here because this was something sent in by our listener. But if, as Maria said, if this is something that sounds familiar to you or you've had a similar thing happen, we would love to hear from you. So please send us a message. You can do so. Our email address is hackinghumans@n2k.com. All right, we're going to take a quick break to hear a message from our sponsor, and after that, we will be right back with my story. Stay tuned. We were talking about mitigating cyber threats to your organization before your users even see them. The new Fish ER Plus from KnowBe4 was developed to help you supercharge your organization's email security defenses. How? You get a unique crowdsourcing advantage. More than 10 million highly trained KnowBe4 end users from across the globe catch and report malicious email that makes it through all the filters. KnowBe4's Threat Lab then validates it with AI and with human researchers. Fish ER Plus blocks phishing threads other tools have missed and proactively removes them from your users' inboxes. Not quite time travel, but we think you'll agree it's a vital capability in any InfoSec professional's arsenal. Visit knowbefore.com/products/fisher-plus to learn more. That's knowbefore.com/products/fisher-plus. And we thank KnowBefore for sponsoring our show. All right, we are back. And my story comes from New York Magazine. This is an article written by Ezra Marcus. And it focuses on 21-year-old University of Miami student, Matt Bergwall. And Matt was living high on the hog. Matt seemed to have, he was living a fantasy life for a university student. Had a nice car, a lovely girlfriend who he would take on fancy vacations to places like, Dubai. Drove a Tesla, Gucci clothes, and all this despite just being a college sophomore. He was also very generous. He'd be the guy who'd pick up the tab at the end of a night out, pay for all of his friends' Ubers, and he was running in the circles of people who were financially well off. He'd hanging out with venture capitalists down in Miami's financial district. He did not come from money. He grew up in Connecticut, nice, average, middle-of-the-road kind of upbringing. He was tech-savvy, but, did not come from money. And all of his friends suddenly realized when news was spread around via their own small network of friends that this gentleman, Matt Bergwall, found himself arrested. And he was implicated in refunding fraud.
Oh.
Evidently, he had caused over $5 million in losses by exploiting shipping systems and claiming false refunds. He had an organization called UPS Now, and what he did was he hacked UPS employee accounts to facilitate fraudulent returns. And according to this article, this kind of blew my mind. He had over 10,000 fraudulent returns over the course of little more than a year. So average that out.
I mean, was this an automated process? Was he manually? Well, my goodness.
According to this, he had staff.
Oh, yeah.
And he was also providing this as a service. So according to this article, a lot of the trading in this world goes on via Telegram. And so folks would contact him to be running their own refund scams. And he would facilitate the scams. So I just want to, before we go any further, let's talk about what a refund scam is, what refund fraud is. So basically, at its simplest level, I order something from Amazon, right? I order a microwave oven from Amazon, and the microwave oven gets delivered. I get on the chat with Amazon customer service, and I say to them, I never got my microwave. And they say, we're sorry. We will refund you the money, or we will send you another microwave, right? Usually you choose. And if you're a regular customer with someone like Amazon, and this isn't a pattern, chances are that's what they're going to do, right? Because they want to keep you happy. When you're running at the scale of somebody like Amazon, sending out an additional item could very well be the cheapest thing to do. But when folks start doing this at scale, that's when it becomes a problem.
Mm-hmm.
So some of the ways that folks do this to be able to do it at scale is they will return empty boxes. So this way, they will purchase something, the item comes, they'll send back an empty box to the retailer, but they'll manipulate the tracking ID so that the package is marked as having had been returned without actually having gone to the right destination. So in this way, the scammer can keep the product while still getting a refund. I'm not exactly sure how the precise details of this work, but
I'll bet that had to do with him breaking into the UPS accounts.
Could be. There was another one here that I thought was clever. They talked about disappearing ink. Okay.
Hmm.
Which to me was like, something you bought at the novelty shop, back at the, right? Right.
You can only see it when you hold it up to the light, just so. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, but no, this is still a thing, and you put the return address in disappearing ink. So the package gets scanned by the delivery service. So in other words, I take this back to UPS, right? I say, here's my microwave oven. I'm going to return it. I go to UPS. It gets scanned at UPS. The company Amazon gets a notice that, hey, this is on the way. It's been put in UPS's system. But by the time it arrives at the warehouse, the ink has disappeared. So now it can't be delivered. But the customer gets the refund because the customer did everything right. They put it in the system. It was UPS's fault that it didn't reach its ultimate destination. So
then does the product come back to the customer?
No, the customer just gets the money back.
Oh, okay.
They don't care about the product in this
So
case.
I'm guessing that nobody is the refunds are just automatically being made as soon as the customer initiates the return and the product tag is scanned, not when the product is received.
In many cases, yes.
Yes, yeah.
Yes.
That seems to be my personal experience. I'm just trying to figure out like that seems to be sort of the modus operandi. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And then they talked about some of the more advanced techniques here, which is one of the ones that this gentleman was using, which was using the accounts of either the people working for the company, the logistics company, or the delivery company, or like Amazon. They'll break into their accounts and manipulate the statuses of orders. And allegedly, that's what this person was doing. They had inside access. So that's how they were able to do it at scale. They could go in and just have, send 100 things back and go into an account that had the ability to mark those things as having been returned, and off you go. This also talks about how evidently there's more and more the folks who work for these companies. So let's say I'm a UPS employee and they're paying me the minimum amount that they can pay me for something like the job I'm doing, and I have access to this. I will sell my access on the side for some sort of bribe. And so I can make a little extra money on the side by having these things marked. So lots of different ways to go at this, but ultimately, this guy got arrested. The FBI caught him. And the FBI said in this story that, in general, the folks who are doing this are really bad at it. They're not bad. They're not bad at the scam part, but they're bad at hiding their identities. They tend to be show-offs. They tend to post to social media what they're doing with the money that they're scamming, and they also tend to be really open about sharing the techniques with other people pretty much out in the open. And so it does make it easier for law enforcement to track them down.
Good.
Right?
Yeah, they're not usually considered the smartest in the bunch, right? You know, if you're being flashy about this kind of thing.
No. But I think it's interesting that you have someone here who was able to have this operate at a significant scale, $5 million.
Yeah.
Over the course of a year or so. That's a big operation. And it's just interesting to see how it works. And I suppose there isn't really anything here for our listeners to protect themselves against, because this is pretty much self-contained. People aren't going after people to scam them with refund scams. I mean, we should all be aware of it because it does make the things we buy more expensive.
It
by
does.
The companies having to deal with this sort of thing. But I just thought it was an interesting story worth sharing. There are a lot more details in the article here. It's a bit of a long read, but it's a good one. The authors suspect that Matt Bergwall might be working with the FBI these days to try to use his expertise to go after some of the other folks who are doing this.
He's trying to bargain himself down for a much lower prison sentence.
Could be. Could be. He has not yet been sentenced to anything. So still in play, but pretty interesting.
Yeah, I think his main the main mistake he did was being in Miami, because if you're in Miami, you're going to want to be flashy. He wouldn't have done that in New Hampshire.
That's right. Or if nothing else, the bar for flashiness would be much lower
Right.
in New Hampshire than it would be, right?
Miami, you got that peer pressure. Everybody's flashy, so you're going to want to be flashy too, and that's what got him.
Yeah, could be. Well, hopefully he'll straighten up and fly right from this point out.
Out of Miami. Okay.
There you go. All right, well, those are our stories for this week. Joe, it's time to move on to our catch of the day.
Dave, our catch of the week comes from?
Your mother.
That's right, my mom.
Oh, my. Oh. There's a joke in there somewhere, but
That's
I'm
right.
not
The
going to be the one
dozens
who
on
makes
hacking
it.
humans.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I got a call from my mom last week, and it was the Joe's Lifetime Tech Support call. She said, "Hey, I sent you an email that I just received, and I want you to take a look at it. I don't think I owe this money or anything's going to happen, but I want to talk to you before I call the number." I'm like, "Do not call the number." Let me look at the email. And while she's on the phone, I just go into my email account and look it up, and it's one of these McAfee scams. The text of the message is strange. It starts off, "Google uses automated systems to discover content from the web and other sources. These systems generate search results that provide useful..." It sounds like either the like marketing material for Google.
Right, it does.
I don't know why this is even in there, but the subject of the message is "Your order is confirmed," and then it's a McAfee invoice, Dave.
Yeah.
So why don't you go ahead and read?
You know what? I'm not, because
Okay.
we've done so many of these.
All right.
They come up so often. But I think
Yeah.
your point is interesting with the body of the email, because that's
Right.
something we haven't seen before. I agree. This looks just like a cut and paste from a About Google page somewhere on their website. And I can only guess that by putting in text that was actually generated by Google, they're hoping to get through Google's email filters.
Yeah.
That Google
It sounds
will
like
recognize.
AI text. Yeah.
That
Yep.
Google will recognize this as being their own and say, well, we couldn't possibly have generated something bad, so let it through.
Yeah, right.
And in this
Yep.
case, it did, because your mom got it.
You might be 100% correct with that, Dave. And Maria, you might also be 100% correct. I wonder if you went to ChatGPT and said, "Describe Google to me," what would it
It's
say?
when I'm reading it right now, this exactly sounds what I would suspect of AI just describing what is Google search. Just sort of
Right.
like a whole bunch of word vomit
Right.
in a very pleasant AI voice about, what it is. And it's friendly fire, I guess.
Yeah.
By the way, just as an aside, I've seen people are trying to get traction with referring to stuff that is obviously and poorly generated by AI as being slop. To have slop be the term of art
like
for
it.
that sort of thing, which I do
Slop.
like. Slop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bit of an insult to slop.
Right.
I like it, though. I like it. That's nice.
Yeah.
Adopt that.
All right, very good. Well, if you would like us to consider something for our catch of the day, you can email us. It's hackinghumans@n2k.com. We want to thank all of you for listening, and of course, we want to thank our sponsors at KnowBefore. They are experts in helping users do the right thing through new school security awareness training. And that's Hacking Humans, brought to you by N2K Cyberwire. Our thanks to the Johns Hopkins University Information Security Institute for their participation. You can learn more at isi.jhu.edu. We'd love to know what you think of this podcast. Your feedback ensures we deliver the insights that keep you a step ahead in the rapidly changing world of cybersecurity. If you like our show, please share a rating and review in your podcast app. Please also fill out the survey in the show notes or send an email to hackinghumans@n2k.com. We're privileged that N2K Cyberwire is part of the daily routine of the most influential leaders and operators in the public and private sector, from the Fortune 500 to many of the world's preeminent intelligence and law enforcement agencies. N2K makes it easy for companies to optimize your biggest investment, your people. We make you smarter about your teams while making your team smarter. Learn how at n2k.com. This episode is produced by Liz Stokes. Our executive producer is Jennifer Iben. We're mixed by Elliot Peltzman and Trey Hester. Our executive editor is Brandon Karp. Peter Kilpie is our publisher. I'm Dave Bittner.
I'm Joe Kerrigan.
And I'm Maria Varmazes.
Thanks for listening. Hey listeners, we're always looking for ways to improve the N2K Cyberwire network and maintain the intelligence-driven news experience that keeps you in the know on the latest developments in cybersecurity. We've launched our 2024 audience survey and would love for you to take a few minutes to share your feedback. And hey, there's even a chance to win a $100 Amazon gift card if you complete the survey. Visit cyberwire.com/survey. That's cyberwire.com/survey and share your feedback now.